Hola a todos y discúlpame porque no soy capaz de hablar en español durante 40 minutos, pues por respeto a tus orejas hablaré en inglés. Okay, so I'm Fabrice Mazery. I'm the CPO of Tiga. We are a company specialized in product management and product design. And previously I was an entrepreneur, and just between that I was working in a company which was called Deezer. How many of you have Spotify running on their smartphones? You're all fired. So I was the head of product and growth at Deezer, and my mission was pretty clear when I arrived, trying to find a way not to be beaten everywhere on every segment by Spotify or Apple Music. So as any product manager will do, I tried to do some research, initially trying to understand the behaviors of my users. And the first thing that I understood was that whatever you do, people always find a way not to use your product as you designed it. They always find a way not to use it, and sometimes, and I'll say often, it breaks the performance. So afterwards, say, okay, let's talk to users. Let's try to understand why they really have this kind of behavior. And that was the second lesson. Everybody lies. I was talking to people, and I could see their behaviors doing something, asking them they're doing something. No, I don't. I never did that. So you say, okay, I need to understand the gap between what people say they do, what they actually do. I need to find a way to know if I had to make this path better or the other one awesome. And that's what I'm going to tell you, how we did that at Deezer in 4 steps. The first one would be, what is the difference between the intention of your user and his behavior? Then we'll see what really drives people, what motivates people to do or not to do something. Then we see how to apply that to your product, and then how to apply that sustainably. That's clear for everyone? Okay, let's rumble intention versus behavior. How many of you have ever subscribed to a gym membership? Okay. How many of you are still going to the gym? Oh, that's a good score, actually. How many of you take how many of you take New Year's resolutions? How many of you decided to quit smoking and actually never quit smoking at all? Okay. You know why? Because this kind of intention has a kryptonite. It's called the chocolate cake. This is a kryptonite of any intention that you have. Which means that if the gym membership is the intention, the chocolate cake is the behavior. So if you try to define what intention is what your user wants to want. You don't really want to go to the gym. You'd like to be willing to want to go to the membership, okay? That's really the difference. And of course, behavior is what your user will really be doing. But how do you explain the gap? What explains the gap between the intention and this behavior? Is the question mark. Let's take another example. This is a map. Everybody know this kind of maps? Fortnite? Not at all. If you take a 13-year-old, he knows this map by heart. They know every detail of it, so they can kill their friends whenever they want and be the one that stays. And imagine the same 13-year-old doing this kind of map. I love the Morse pain thing. Why such a difference? These are 2 maps. The first one is really complicated. This one is not that complicated. Well, just like Pia Maria said this morning, the Fortnite one is about intrinsic motivation. He knows why he has to learn it, so he can perform better, so he can impress his friends, so he can just develop himself. That's intrinsic. The other one, he doesn't understand why he has to learn it. So it's extrinsic. If you don't have an exam, why learn it? I don't care, I have Google Maps to do this. So the real link between the intention and the behavior is the motivation. It's the reason behind the will and the action. In product management, there's a word we use for that. It's called engagement. Engagement is the will and the action of your user to invest his attention in your product willingly. It means that if you want to build engagement, you need motivation. No motivation equals no engagement. Pretty straightforward. Everybody's following me? Okay. What drives people? Why do people are motivated or not motivated? Well, actually, there are 8 core drives that can explain all the behaviors of your users. Let's deep dive into every one of it. The first one is called epic meaning. Epic meaning is about participating to something that is bigger than you. For example, giving money to Amnesty International is a way of participating to something that is bigger than you. You have products that actually use these kind of levers. Wikipedia or Waze. Who uses Waze? Who uses Google Maps? You know there's a main difference between Google Maps and Waze. If you're on Google Maps and there's a problem on the road, you're yelling at Google Maps. And if you're using Waze, what you do, oh yeah, there's a problem on the road, I click on +1, I'm happy. Yeah, the problem on the road, yeah, I know. Which is just participating in something that is bigger than you, beating the traffic. The second one is development and accomplishment. Everything that is linked with skills. So if you're doing some sports, maybe using Strava. Or if you try to develop skills and you go to a training, for example, the product management training did by me in Madrid in something like 2 weeks, just say. But the same thing with open classrooms, LinkedIn learning, developing skills. Third one, empowerment of creativity and feedback, the test and learn process. Who here loves playing Lego? That's just playing. You don't do that with an objective in your mind. You just want to play. But if you use Snapchat and you want, I don't know, to create a filter to share with your friends, that's creativity. That's this core drive. The fourth one is ownership and possession. Basically, what you own and don't want to lose. Money, of course, your house, your wife, your mistress, sometimes, whatever, not judging. But everything linked to virtual goods. Your LinkedIn profile, you don't want to lose it. You've built it. You've built a lot of relationship on LinkedIn. You don't want to go from scratch on another professional social network. And Deezer, of course, because you're creating your playlist in Deezer, or maybe after this talk you will, never know. Social influence and relatedness, everything linked to social. So of course you're going to tell me Facebook or Twitter, but that's the same thing with Instagram. In Instagram, you're looking at photos of people that are richer and nicer than you. It's called envy or jealousy. The same thing with Apple. You can be with Apple or hate Apple, but in a way it's a social norm. The sixth one is scarcity and impatience, willing what you cannot have or cannot have right now. The example, I've waited 2 years to know how Cersei Lannister will die. And Euron Greyjoy too. Okay, let's be honest. Really hated that guy. At the same kind of things with the Visa Infinite. You don't know why you want it, but you want it because it's cool, because you cannot have it now. The seventh one is really about unpredictability and curiosity. You want to know what's new, you want to know what's next. Definitely the guys that master that, Netflix. They are so good at it. Now you have to wait 5 seconds. Just 5 seconds. They actually want to replace you sleeping. Okay? If they could, they will do that. And of course, Twitter, everything linked to the feeds. You go back to it and you scroll in because there could be something new. The last one is the loss and avoidance, things that you don't want to lose at all. Basically, we buy insurances for that. But of course, Booking.com, you know, the company that puts pressure on you so you can go on holiday. When you go on Airbnb, starting your holiday, you are browsing it. Booking.com, all they do is using dark patterns to make you buy something. And it works really, really well. So these are the 8 core drives that explain any behavior or any intention from a user. Yeah, take the photo. Thank you. This profile is better, actually. I can understand that it's still a bit blurry, so let's apply that to a product that you might be using. Facebook. Okay, do you think that Facebook has a meaning? No. Sorry for that. No, doesn't have. Development and accomplishment? What would you say? Yes, just a little bit. Yeah, when you create your profile, when you have your first 10 friends, or 100, or 10,000 friends, there's a bit of an accomplishment. It's not actually that big. Empowerment of creativity and feedback. Every time you share something. Every time you're trying to share something, you have a feedback from your friends. It's about creativity and feedback, but not that important. Ownership, what would you say? Actually, lots. Your photos, your friends, your memories, your privacy. You should own it, theoretically. Social, what would you say? Of course. All the invites, the likes, the envy you're doing is about social. Scarcity and impatience? No? No, actually not. Not since 2004, when they limited Facebook to Stanford and to Yale. If you've seen The Social Network, the movie, you know everything about that. Unpredictability? What would you say? Yeah, the feed. You're going back to Facebook to see if you've missed something from your friends. And the loss and avoidance? If you own things, you don't want to lose them. So in a way, how many of you have deleted the Facebook app from their smartphones? How many of you deleted the Facebook account? Because you don't want to lose things. They're still here. Okay, that's Facebook. What about you? What about your product, actually? Maybe what you've been doing during my presentation is this. What I have now in my product, what I could have. That's not a bad question to ask, but that's not the right question to start. The right question to start is not about your product. It's about your user. What will user's success look like in your product? And why? In a way, why is he doing what he's doing? And what should he use your product for years and years? Well, it's about personas. Everybody knows about personas. we don't care that your persona is 32, or she's a woman, or she has blue eyes. What we care about is motivations. So you need to do some research and rebuild your personas around their motivations. Once you've done that, you mix it with the jobs to be done, what he wants to do and what actually you're enabling, and then you can do the subtraction and say what you could add. Let's take a really basic example around Deezer. The basic job of any music streaming app is listen to music, okay? But it means that I have a lot of features to answer that, a lot of them. And of course, you can link that to motivations. But imagine a persona, which is an actual persona. He wants to listen to music, but he wants to avoid effort. He doesn't want to spend time selecting music. The problem is that they're just a subset of that will actually match with the motivations. The blue ones. I can follow playlist. I can follow others' playlists. But I don't want to create my own playlist. I'm not interested in that. Imagine that this persona is not served well by Spotify or Apple Music. What could you do? What we decided to do was to create an algorithm called the flow. In a way, we thought if people consume music and they don't want to make an effort, maybe we can predict what kind of music they would like to listen to. So all they have to do is to click on play and lean back. So we created the flow and we added this. We added a personal soundtrack that it didn't have. We added a lot of accomplishments because the flow is your flow. You don't just have it since the beginning. And at the end, what I want you to have is your personal soundtrack. Because not being able to export a playlist is artificial retention. It's not because my product is good. It's because I don't want you to go at creating a barrier. That's not a good way to actually keep people in your product. But having this kind of algorithm, when you say, okay, if I quit Deezer, I will lose my personal soundtrack, could be a good argument to stay. That's just the beginning of the journey. Because your user evolves. You just cannot give that to everyone. You start as a noob. And at the end, you may become a veteran. So what you need to do is not just to design it, it's to design the path to success. The path to success and all the steps between the acquisition and the way that he has his personal soundtrack that he doesn't want to lose. Going through acquisition, activation, and of course, retention. And if you take the example of the flow, it gives you this. At the end of the top, my Mount Everest is, I have my personal soundtrack I won't have elsewhere. But I told you, it's complicated to link intention and behavior. If the intention is that, look at the path. People would just not keep the motivation on the road. I need to create steps that look like victories. These kind of victories, you just don't invent it. It's only qualitative research. So I need to understand what will mean something to your user on the way. But how do you go from step 4 to step 5? You go through actions. So you need to design action. And on that, the only thing that matters is data. You need to understand that every action should be meaningful to your user and should link to your own success. So desired because it gets you closer to success. You have people that actually stay in your product. And meaningful because it gets them closer to success. Every one of these actions could be a positive or negative action. And if you take that one, if you want to know if the action is good, just take a look at that. How many of these people that actually done this action or this step of action reach the step 5? If you do it with the flow, it gives you this. We know at Deezer that people that like genres, artists from genres, will have a good flow because it's diverse enough for us to create a good algorithm. So people who do that, we know there's a high probability of them unlocking and using the flow. It means that there are actions that are negative, and we call them drifting points. Action that endanger success. Drifting points, in a way, you don't necessarily have to kill it. First, you need to understand why people are doing this. It's the design versus experience that I showed you at the beginning. You need to understand why people are doing that, because it's bad design, because they have a desire and you just don't answer to it. If you want to know if it's driven action, just see how many people have done an action and how many of them hasn't been to step 5. For us, if you like only songs on Deezer, your flow will be bad. Because I don't know, for example, if Nicholas here likes Walking on the Moon from the Police. I don't know if he likes Walking on the Moon, or the Police, or Sting, or maybe Eric Clapton. I don't know. I just don't know. So it's too narrow for me. So I don't want Nicholas to like songs at all. I want him to like artists or genres. If you do this, for all your personas, rebuilding your personas around motivation, doing some research to understand which are the steps that look like success, and then go in your product and try to encourage the right actions to kill the bad actions, you end up creating linking intention and behavior, linking will and action, linking short-term and long-term, which is called engagement. It's okay for you? Still following me? Okay. But there's a but in this. I give you the way to create engagement, to understand which levers you're playing with if you want to motivate people to use your product. How can you not transform? Sorry. So, it happens. It told us in Deezer, just doing that in 2017, but not just personalizing music, but personalizing the experience itself. Flow was just the first brick. What we did was a way to personalize the product itself. Change the interface based on what people were doing, based on their motivation. It allowed us to have 44% more MAU, 47% more DAU, which ended up with 32% more subscribers in a year. It allowed us to raise $1,060 million and to become a unicorn. Yay! But how do you make sure that this doesn't become this? How do you make sure that you're not harming your user at all? There are a lot of people on the internet that will sell you easy ways of creating engagement. It's kind of just like selling a weapon without telling that's a weapon. Yeah, I don't like Nereal at all. He's my Will Wheaton. Because not giving the levers to people means that you're playing with things that you don't master. It means that you easily can create toxicity. That was a challenge to put Britney Spears in my presentation. How do you know if your product is toxic? There are 3 criteria, actually. The first one is it internationally deceitful? For example, if I sell you a smartphone or a car and I tell you you're going to change your life, that's a lie. But all the advertising on cars is about a new way of thinking, shifting watts, doing a star. It's just a car, okay? It's just a car, it's just a smartphone, whatever. Second one, do you trick your user into doing something she wouldn't do? Who here wants to be addicted? Okay, but that's what they do. They want you to be addicted. The third one, does it benefit disproportionately to one of the stakeholders? Usually that's actually the shareholder. And then sometimes it is you. Sometimes you do things because it's in your OKRs. Sometimes you do things because your management asks you to do that. Sometimes just because you have an ambition. The problem is that it disproportionately benefits to you and not to your user. Farmville is a good example of a toxic product. Who, and you can say that, it's just between you and the rest of the world, within intimacy. Who played Farmville? Yeah. Yeah, man. You feel better? No, yeah. I can understand that. So, you know how Farmville works. You're supposed to create a farm, you know, it plants carrots and cabbage or oranges and things like that. And I'd like to put yourself in the shoes of the product manager who had the mission for his first quarter to actually boost engagement. And so brainstorming and say, what could we do? Oh, I have an idea. Maybe we could tell people that, at the beginning, if you plant carrots, you have to get back after 24 hours. But let's change that. That if you plant carrots, you have to come back after 5 hours, and cabbage 6 hours, and orange 7 hours. Okay, so people will go back to my product because they don't want to miss it. So it boosted engagement. Then quarter 2, hey, you still have to boost engagement. Oh no, what kind of idea could I have? Hey, maybe if people arrive late, it starts to rotten, no? It starts to rot. So your carrots, which are orange, then they become brown or yellow and black, and afterwards you lose everything. That could be cool. And actually, engagement goes on and on. People connect. And on the third quarter, because I guess that the guy might have read Hooked by Nereal, you guys say maybe we could randomize it, you know? So people, the carrot is between 2 and 4 hours. And if you go back afterwards, you lose everything. And engagement plummeted, okay? There's a friend of mine, she was really playing a lot from it. She was really a core user. And we went on holiday. And it was in the middle of France, where you don't have any network, okay? And all our friends were enjoying our time, having barbecue, while she was doing that, trying to find a network. We went there for 10 days. 10 days, and she went through the 5 steps of the grief process, really. And when we came back to Paris, she opened it, and everything was dead. Really dead. That was just nothing. And she felt better. She was feeling better. Farmville created a game where you feel better when you don't play at all. Which got of a repetition for War Games, the movie, for those who know that. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of an experiment called the Milgram experiment. Who knows about the Milgram experiment? Okay. Stanley Milgram is a professor of psychology at Stanford. And between 1960 and 1962, he runs an experiment around what we call the authority bias. Stanley Milgram came from a Jewish family. It was 15 years after the end of the Second World War, and he just didn't understand how normal people like you and me could have done such horrible things. His assumption was that because there was an authority telling them to do, so he designed an experiment to test that. So you take two people, you, for example, and an accomplice, Nicholas here. You come to me, I'm, a researcher, and I tell you we're going to run experiments. You are going to be in front of this, and Nicholas will be in the other room. You cannot see him, but you can listen to him. Okay? What I'm going to ask you to do is you have a list of couple of words. White House, red bike, blue pen. You just read the list. And then I'd like you to propose, for example, white, and then 4 words. House, pen, bird, and cat. Every time that Nicholas gives a wrong answer, you push on that lever, okay? The lever gives him an electrical shock, beginning with 45 volts. And then, at every wrong answer, you use the lever on the right, it's plus 15 volts. It goes from 45 volts to 450 volts. But you can listen to him. So at the beginning, you just listen, ouch, that's okay. And then say, ow, that's painful. And then afterwards, I want to stop, I want to get out of that. Come back, you look at me, I'm in the room, say, that's the experiment, go on. And then you go on. Look around you. We are all intelligent people. Imagine that you're all running the experiment. How many of you think that people went until 450 volts, which is actually killing Nicholas? How many of you would say from 0 to 25% of people killed Nicholas? Okay. From 25 to 50? From 50 to 75? More than 75%? You're so mean. These are the results of the first experiments, 1960, 1962. Okay? So 65% of the people decided to kill Nicholas. Of course, at the end of the experiment, I opened the door and you see Nicholas. He's alive, he's well. I told you that was a recording. And then I ask you questions. I'll ask you a question, which is, who's responsible? Who's responsible for the pain of Nicholas if it had been right? You say, but you are. You asked me to do this. Yes, but actually you don't have a gun pointed at your head. I just tell you that was for the experiment. And you'd be paid anyway. Say, you're responsible. You told me to do this. Thus, an authority bias. When you take a look at people at Twitter and Facebook, I guess that no one on Twitter or Facebook wanted it to become like it is today. There were a lot of product managers and product designers said, that was in my OKRs. That was my manager asking to do this. Maybe that was my VCs asking me to do this. That's an authority bias. If you don't want to create toxicity, use the framework. The 3 at the bottom is called white hat motivation. The top ones are called white hat motivation. If you take a look at this, what Fabrice has done, Fabrice has been playing with unpredictability and avoidance. Not at all with the other ones. What they've done is that created pressure on their users. Pressure They don't want to create anything good for them. And if you want another measure of it, because in a way, that's pretty subjective, you can measure it. You can focus on something called the return on engagement. In a way, your user, every time that he goes to your product, invests attention. That's what engagement is about. Attention is the more scarce resource there is in the digital world. So if he invests his attention, he's looking for a return. So value divided by engagement. You can apply that to any of your actions to know if they are positive or negative actions, action that allow success or drifting points. For Deezer, it's listen time divided by active time. My goal is that if you're using the flow, for example, all you have to do is click on play and then do something else, because music will be in the background. I don't want you to spend all your time actually interacting with my app. So in a way, my own conclusion is, I gave you a way to understand the behavior of your users, to link that with the intents. I just ask you not to be a digital sociopath. I can put the framework back if you want. So do you have any questions? Or maybe you're completely demotivated? Yeah.
Thanks a lot for sharing. I find your framework really interesting, and I was just thinking, what was your inspiration? You know, how did you build it up? You know, it's very interesting. Could you share, please?
Yeah. So the framework is not mine. It was created by a guy called Yu Kai Chao. It's called the Octalysis framework. You can find it on the internet. At the base of this, it was created for gamification. But gamification is just being inspired by how games drive engagement. The only thing that you don't have to do is playing. You have to pay your taxes, but nobody obliges you to actually play, apart from Farm Bill if you have a big farm and you absolutely need to have a goat, but whatever. So yeah, it's really about that. Then if you get back to it, you have a lot of theories around, of course, intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. Thing from, of course, people like Pink, but you have a lot of other people working on that. B.G. Fogg, for example, on intrinsic motivation, the self-determination theory. Just be careful, none of them talk about ethics. They all tell you about how to motivate people, but motivate people into doing something that could be really bad for them. They don't care about that. Nor does my Will Wheaton. Yeah, there.
Hello, congratulations for the presentation. I have one question. Do you have any experience in with this model in a B2B context?
Yeah. I'll give you the worst example I could imagine in B2B, but it's not, I'd say even worse. Taxes. It's even worse than B2B, you know? In Taiwan, since 1951, every time that you pay your taxes, you receive a number for a lottery. You can earn 6,000, I should say euros, but of course not in euros. just by playing. So these aren't things that you can use saying what would motivate people to actually declare their taxes. That's an example. I've used it in a B2B company called Side Trades. It was a financial SaaS. And we had a really big problem, which was every time there was a problem with a customer, they didn't feel that they actually, it was cash collectors, and they didn't think that they were competent enough to create a litigation case or something like that within the product. And in a way, what we did is that we transformed something which was a form really complicated with really complicated words. And usually cash collectors, they don't have a lot of diplomas. A lot of people told them they're live, then they were not intelligent or whatever. So they have a kind of an imposter syndrome, you know? So what we did is we transformed the form into simple questions. We asked them, what would be a progress to you? Well, you're live with a customer. What could you do? Just answering questions. That's okay for them. So in a way, what we did is that instead of having a form which was complicated, we created simple questions that would actually fulfill the form. And they just registering it, they never saw the result, which was at the end you have a form that is fulfilled. Just because we thought that they needed to do that, it was a stress for them. But I have other examples if you want to talk about it afterwards.
Thank you.
Other questions, maybe? Yes, no obligation. Okay. Okay, well, thank you a lot.